Please join me as we welcome Mr. Joe Diamond.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me? Pretty good? Yeah, okay. I'm greatly honored to be invited to Edward Middle High School. Am I saying it right? Yeah. No? What is it? I'm sorry, Edward Town Middle. I should have known that, but you know, when you get old, you forget. Okay. There are a lot of people, a lot of our people my age are dying, so we want to make sure that the new generation, because you are the new generation, gets the message. And you're the future of this country. We want to make sure what happened to me and my family is not going to happen here. My family and myself lived in a small town in Czechoslovakia. It's now the Czech Republic. It was a beautiful country. We were a village, about 1,600 people. We were located in a valley surrounded by mountains. And I just get a little homesick when I talk about it, you know. You always remember the place you're born. We had all sorts of people in my village. We had all kinds of religions. We had Protestants, Roman Catholics. People got along harmoniously. There was some talk that World War II might start, but people didn't pay any attention. There was a guy by the name of Hitler that was on the radio twice a week. He wasn't talking. He was yelling. He sounded like a madman. Some people laughed at him. Some people took him seriously. World War II started, and the German army moved into our village. Those guys looked real tough. They had all the latest equipment. And the minute they set foot in our village, discrimination, racism began against our people. If you were Jewish or Jewish ethnicity, you were forced to wear a yellow star, just like that. But since we're Caucasian, we had to wear that from the ages of 3. So you can be humiliated and picked on, you know what I mean? For example, if an old man was going to church or to a temple, he had a prayer book with him. It was nothing unusual for a drunk to came to him and just kicked his face in and pushed him down, and he just looked up to God, and the police just ignored it. We couldn't walk on a sidewalk if you were Jewish because they felt you're not 100% citizens, even though you lived here for generations. We couldn't go to public school. We couldn't go to a public pool. So all these little things were picked on you because I guess you were not as good as the rest of the people. We've heard stories, people are getting killed in Poland and Denmark, but you know, you don't pay attention till it happens to you. I'm going to skip a couple. It was already 1944. It looks like Germany was losing the war. It looks like they've had it. They were coming back. When they came to our town, those guys looked like Marines. They looked tough. Now they came back from Russia. They lost the war. Their faces were in bad shape. They looked like they were frozen to death. Instead of coming back by trucks, they came back by horse and buggy. It looks like Germany has had it. So we were hoping, our people, that maybe we heard some killings, maybe they'll forget about us. You know, they got enough problems. Their cities are being bombed and they've had it. Why would they want to start killing people? They have plenty of problems of their own. But guess what? They didn't forget about that mission. It was more important for them to try to kill us than to win the war. So March the 22nd, 1944, there was like a town crier. You know, we had people. A lot of people were illiterate, so they had a guy that was coming with a drum, and he was in the town square, and he usually told the news. And the following was his message. All people that are Jews or Jews extraction will have to be ready within 24 hours, and they can only take whatever they can carry, not much, about 35 pounds. And we're going to be taken away to help with the harvest. That was a big lie, of course. That was a real shock, you know. You lived there all your life. You went to school here, and your parents went to school here, and you had your farms here. All of a sudden, they tell you you're going to leave. But then you look at the German soldier. He looks like you and me. They don't look like killers. So we thought maybe when the war is over, we're going to come back home. But that wasn't so easy. So next morning, we were all ready. Waited for them to take us. I'll never forget, 2 stormtroopers came to our house. They came right into our kitchen with guns. They had fixed bayonets on them. They came to pick us out like we're major criminals. They told us they're going to take us to a local school for processing before we're taken away. You know, they got to make sure you don't take anything valuable with us. So they said, "Are you folks ready?" I said, "Yes, we are." They put us on Main Street. People next door were in the same situation. By the way, I have to tell you, my mom was 39 years old at the time. I had a brother that was 7, and I was about 15. You can see that must have been long ago. So anyway, they took us and they told us to stay right here on Main Street. They took people next door. They took us out just like us. They assembled about 600 people. Now picture 600 people walking to the local school. The reason they took us to school, there's more room to do processing. As we were going, I'll never forget, as we were walking about 2.5 miles, we had soldiers in front of us, on the rear and on the side, like we're major criminals. Some of our neighbors that I used to know all our lives were watching us. They didn't look upset. They acted like it's the 4th of July. One guy even yelled out, "Hey, why don't you leave me your winter coat? You know, we're going to be dead." I thought to myself, if I ever survive, I'd want to talk to this guy, you know, or maybe who knows what else. Anyhow, it's just something comes to mind. Anyway, they took us to that school. They checked us out. By midnight, we were on a train going to a bigger city. What they did, they took people from all these little villages and put them in a larger city. They took us to a brick factory. Why did they take us to a brick factory? There was all kind of space, so you can spread out. And they told us we're only going to be in that brick factory for 4 weeks, because wherever our destination is, they said it's very busy, so we're going to have to be here. Now, there was no sanitary facilities here. There was no housing. We slept outside. You had a blanket. It was about 26 degrees out. 2 days ago, you had a comfortable home. Here, you had nothing, and you're outside, and who knows what's going to happen to you. But we managed somehow for 4 weeks, and now they are ready to take us away. They made an announcement on the PA system that they are ready to take us away to our final destination. Trucks, a bunch of trucks came to the brick factory. They looked like coal trucks. They were like lumber trucks. No human being can get on those trucks. But they expected senior citizens, little kids, or anybody get on these trucks. I'll never forget this lady struggled to get on the truck, and some of the soldiers were having fun. You know, they thought it was funny, like trying to get on the truck. They picked her up and just threw her in there. Some of the kids were crying in that confusion. They lost their parents, and the soldiers didn't like that. They went on their nerves. They just picked up one kid here, just threw him in there. What kind of people were those? You know, I mean, I'm sure they had their own families, you know, but it's unbelievable. Anyway, we finally got on these trucks. It was a very short trip. It was about 2.5 hours, and we got to the railroad stations. Railroad station, it's called in German Bahnhof. We were very busy during World War II. You know, there was a lot of action, a lot of trains, equipment. We also noticed about 40, 50 boxcars all lined up. Cattle cars. They look kind of crude. So we all thought maybe they're shipping cattle. But guess what? That was going to be we found out that's going to be our transportation. These cattle cars looked kind of crude. They had one little opening for air, for the animals. And if people had to go in there, it could carry 40 people standing. They squeezed 110 of us in there, like sardines. They gave us a bucket of water. They said they did, but we never saw it. The train next to us had the same thing, squeezed in a lot of people. So there was a lot of trains, just like ours, ready to move. They couldn't go too fast because the weight was heavy. They were only able to go 28 miles per hour, and that was bad because there was a catastrophe inside the train. You know, there was no air. People were fainting. A couple of dead kids already. You know, it's funny. You never saw somebody, a dead person, never see dead children here. It really attacks you. And especially the mothers. After traveling a whole day and a whole night and suffering, the train stopped in Krakow, Poland. Krakow is a famous city in Poland. It's amazing. They told us they're taking us to Germany. Here we're in Krakow, Poland. And the only reason it stopped is to throw out some of the dead people. That's what I call it. All you could hear is people cry for water. You can handle hunger, but when you're thirsty and you're in bad shape, that'll kill you. I'll never forget, it was 12 midnight approximately, and as people were yelling for water, this little lady, must have been a Polish citizen who was in Krakow, Poland, approached the train with 2 buckets of water. Now, 2 buckets of water wouldn't have done much, but here was a human being that had a heart. As she approached the train, the German stormtrooper kicked it out of her hands. He said, "I'm sorry, those people had enough water." It's just something that, no big deal, that's always in your mind, how rotten. One guy was a human being and the other one was an animal. Anyway, continues my story. We continued our journey, and within 2 hours we arrived at our destination. We did have no idea where we were. Finally, the doors opened, and we faced a huge sign in front of us. It said, in German, "Welcome to Auschwitz, Auschwitz II." We never heard of Auschwitz before. I had no idea. I found out there's Auschwitz I and Auschwitz II. Auschwitz I is more of an administrative camp for prisoners of war. Auschwitz II is an extermination camp, because we had no idea about it when we arrived. Extermination camp means you never leave here. As a matter of fact, they told us the only way you're going to get out of here is through a smoke. We had no idea what they're talking about. They told us to start moving out of the train. Some of the soldiers looked like you see in the History Channel movies. I know you guys don't watch history. You know, the guns and the boots and the sticks. And they came right into the train, started beating people because they're not moving fast enough. And they said, "Leave the luggage in there," he says. "They're going to bring it to us. You know, maybe we're going to the Marriott. They're going to bring us the luggage." I'll never forget one incident, which is very sad, but I have to tell you about it. It took a long time for one lady and a little baby a couple of kids to get out. So one of the soldiers says, "What's taking so long to get these rotten people out?" He says, somebody said, "Well, some lady just gave birth. We're trying to protect the child and a blanket, and so if you would bear with us." The soldier took the baby and kicked it out like a football in the field. You know what I mean? I mean, this is something I can't forget. It always stays in my mind. Now here we're talking about people that were civilized. You know, most civilized people in the world were killers, because that's how they were trained. Anyway, they told us to line up as families, get out of the train and line up, because we're going to be interviewed. So there's about 4,000 people ahead of us because 3 soldiers way up front are going to interview us. They're going to check out what kind of work each person can do so they can put you to work. And, you know, they can also decide who's going to live and who's going to die, because they must be gods. So we're standing in line like fools for 4.5 hours till our turn came. Finally, we faced 3 German soldiers. One of them was an officer. One of them says to my mom, "How old is your boy?" That's my brother. She says 7 years old. Says, "Okay, now you and the boy we're going to send to residential camp. And me and my dad are going to go to a labor camp. I can do manual work like an adult then, and we can visit on weekends." We hardly had a chance to say goodbye. They put them on trucks, my mom, my brother, and other people. And that's the last time I saw my mom and my brother. I never saw them again. They didn't take him to no residential camp. That was a big lie. Within 3 hours, they were up in smoke. They took him directly to the gas chamber because they didn't feel they can do the work. They didn't want to separate the mother from a child under 11. People that were in my train, 60% of them went directly to the chamber. Senior citizens, handicapped, and maybe left some people that can do work. The gas chambers were working day and night. It was a fast way of killing people. We lost most of our people. 1,500 to 1,800 people were being cremated a day. Germany was proud of that. They could never do this with machine guns. They were more proud to kill people than to win the war. And I say that, I'm sincere. I'm going to go back away from that for a minute, from the gas chamber. My dad and me were taken to a disinfected area where we were going to take showers. We stripped our clothes off. Now everybody was naked. They were going to give us prison clothes. I'll never forget, my dad kept a prayer shawl on him. You know, he wasn't religious, but when you're in trouble, sometimes you start talking to God, you know, praying. So he kept a prayer shawl, and one of the prisoners came up to him and ripped it off him. He says, "You old fool, how could you even believe in God? Look what's happening to us." And you know, he was right. Where's this God you've been praying about scriptures? And maybe God was on vacation during that period, because all the religious people were killed first. And you can understand how a lot of us feel about it. But after a while, we do believe. I wouldn't be here today if there was no God. But at the time, we had our hesitation, you know. So anyway, to continue my story, my dad and me were separated. They sent them to another camp. So now I was alone. You know, when you're 15, you're still not an adult. You know, you're still like a kid in a way. You're used to being home. So now you're alone. You got to make your own decisions if you want to survive. And it's amazing. You could be 13, 14 years old, and when you have a problem, you can decide things, and you can do it just like an adult. They put me together between 3,500 guys between the ages of 14 and 17. They put us in barracks. They looked like stables. They had bunks in there. They were made out of orange crates. It looked kind of real crude. Then we had a man that was in charge of us. He welcomed us. He says, "Welcome to Auschwitz. If you people will work, we'll help you. If you're not going to work hard or listen, the gas chamber is only 500 yards away." That's all they were threatening us all the time. We're going to go to the gas chamber. Just to give you a little geography of the area, we were in a camp called B Camp. Next to us was a woman's camp. That was called C Camp, and to the right of us was a gypsy camp. You know, gypsies were not a favorite of the Germans. They tried to wipe them out. May the 22nd, 1944, July, they actually torched the whole camp. Women, men, and children. And the only crime they committed because they were gypsies. Who are they to decide who should live and who's going to die? And talking about these ladies that were next to us, we were separated by barbed wire, which was electrified. If you touched it, you got electrocuted. Watching these ladies with their sad-looking faces and their terrible-looking prison clothes, they kept yelling over to us, "Have you seen my son?" They tried to give us their name of their kids. Maybe we have seen them. Well, we had our own problems. Every time we had a extra piece of bread, we threw it over to them, and if we got close to the fence, they got electrocuted. We used to get up 6 o'clock in the morning, and we could see 15, 20 women hanging from that fence. They just committed suicide. They couldn't handle it. So it was a real killing field here. Every day when they went to work, the soldiers, the guards used to whip them because they didn't move fast enough. I always asked myself, why weren't these guys fighting in combat instead of, I call it babysitting? You know, you got these big guys, 6'5", guns all over, and guarding women and children. I'll never understand that. Anyhow, We were under quarantine. They locked up our place where we were. Said nobody can go outside. I had a chance to take the garbage out, and I'll never forget when I came out. I couldn't see in front of me. The whole place looks like the whole village was on fire. I asked one of the people, what's going on here? He says, well, you're right near the gas chambers. We're only 500 yards away, and 5 chimneys were going at one time. There were more people being killed in 1944 than all the years put together. So when I came back, I told the guys that we're real close to the gas chambers, and that really worried us because it's bad enough that we're hungry, we haven't got enough food, but we had to worry about a gas chamber because in case you're not strong enough or you look weak, they took you there. The quarantine was over. I don't know why they had a quarantine. Nobody was sick. They just didn't know what to do with us, and they put us to work. Our job was to carry bricks and masonry materials from the masonry area to the gas chamber area. They already had the footings in for another chamber because the ones that were in action could not handle the people that were rolling in every day. Just to give you an idea, you had a wooden bag in front of you made out of wood with straps where you could put bricks in there. And you could carry another 10 bricks in both arms. So each guy carried about 25 bricks. You figure 3,500 guys, 25 bricks. That's a lot of cheap labor. After doing this for about 3 weeks, a lot of the guys didn't look so good because the food they were feeding us was real horrid. In the morning you got some black hot water, supposed to be coffee with some old bread that was like 5 weeks old. Nobody could eat it. But when you're hungry, you're going to eat that. Lunchtime you had a soup. There's all kind of rotten vegetables inside. There's all kind of mixtures that we never saw before. Who knows what it was. A spoon could stand on it, but it tasted like poison. Nobody could eat that, but after a while, when you're hungry, you're going to eat that too. At night, you had a special dinner. You had, not dinner, you had special lunch. That was horse meat, horse salami. No vitamins, no nothing. So it doesn't take long. With working hard, killing yourself, not having the right food, guys begin to look bad. You could see 14, 15-year-old guys with their faces drawn in, dragging their feet as they walk. They look like old men. They couldn't do the work. They were starving to death. We used to see the German guy on guard duty, and we used to yell out, "Sir, can you spare a sandwich?" I'll never forget when the guy threw a sandwich just for fun. 20 of us were diving for it, and I was one of them. It's amazing. Not too long ago, we had a comfortable home, went to school. Here you're desperate for a piece of bread. What the heck happened here? You forgot about your family. You forget about your friends. It's like survival of the fittest. I never wanted to kill myself, no matter how bad things were. What kept me going is I wanted to see the face of the enemy when they lost the war, and I also was hoping to see my family again. The key is that you just don't let it go. When you're hungry, if you have to eat dirt, so be it. Or if you're cold, you got to keep moving. So this is what kept us going, and this is true in life too. After working for so many months and losing a lot of our people, a lot of the boys, Germany decided to have a selection. They wanted to weed out the weakest from us and possibly send them to the gas chamber. So there was a guy by the name of Dr. Mengele. Anybody heard of that name? Oh, wow, you guys have a good background. He was experimenting with kids and everything, but he also liked to do selections. I'll never forget, I met him. He came with another soldier. We were all lined up so we can be inspected. We're all lined up 5 in a row. He came to me and looked at me and he said, look me over to see if I can still do work, and I guess I passed. I can do work. He looked at a friend of mine I went to school with. He didn't like the way he looked. He looked weak. He pushed him on that side. He picked 800 of us that day and sent them to the gas chamber at night. Trucks came, the German shepherds, they took them to the chamber. 3 weeks later, another 1,700 were taken. From 3,500, only 325 of us survived. I'm guilty sometimes. I feel guilty that I survived. Who am I to survive? But maybe what makes me feel good that I can at least give the message of the dead. I was saved by a criminal when I was standing in line to go to the chamber. They were trying to get some information from us, and I was standing in line, and you know, when you're dying, you're going to cry too, no matter how tough you are. I'll never forget, somebody tapped me on the shoulder, and he says, "Don't be worried, I'll save you." I don't know who the guy was. All I know, he was a prisoner of war. He was a criminal. I understand he killed 2 of his wives. That's why he was in prison, but he was in charge of us. And he kind of picked me, and he felt sorry for me. Maybe I reminded him of his family. He told me to jump out through a window at midnight and just go away, because this group is going to be taking the gas chamber. I'll never forget, I got outside. I jumped down about 16 feet. I got hurt, but not badly. I crawled on my stomach till I got to an outhouse. Does anybody know what outhouse is? Yeah, okay. The guy that was in charge was a prisoner of war, a Russian prisoner of war. He says, "I can hide you. I can put you in a hole, right inside the hole in the latrine. And those are deep." So I went down in the hole. I was standing on rods, on steel rods like that, all night, and all that sewer. And I'm glad he took me out. I wouldn't be here today. But again, I never saw the man again that helped me. He just disappeared. So maybe there is a God out there, you know. Just thought I'll tell you that story. Anyway, as time went on, it looked like Germany's losing the war, and we could hear artillery fire. Looks like the Russian army is getting close to Auschwitz. So we're hoping we're going to be liberated by the Russian army, but I guess they never made it. So they took us away from Auschwitz. We went through a death march. Death march means you walk through the country without food, and if you can't walk, they shoot you down. We walked approximately 350 miles all over Germany. Lost a lot of people. We came to a camp. They wouldn't let us in. They said it's filled up. We had to stand at attention for about 8 hours. 2 below zero, guys were just dropping like flies. They would have been better off to kill us instead of going through death marches. They took us another place in East Germany. I'll never forget the welcoming committee we had in that place. It was called Liebe Rose. They had skeletons all laid out at the front gate. I guess that told us that's going to be our end here. But they didn't kill us here either. They took us away. They put us to work to build barracks for German retired officers. We didn't do the actual building, we did the sewer work. After many brushes of death and going through hell, we wound up in Austria, a place called Gunskirchen. The name doesn't mean anything. They brought all the stragglers in here, and they said, before we get liberated, they're going to burn the whole place with the prisoners. There was no food there. There was no room to stand. The guards that were guarding us were bored. They started target practicing. One of the prisoners, tied himself up with a blanket to a couple of trees. He took his rifle and shot him down. No reason at all. A couple of the soldiers mingled with the prisoners and just started killing prisoners at random. You know, they look like you and me. They must have written a letter to their parents or their girlfriends that they had a hell of a hunting day. Time went on. Didn't look like we were going to make it. I was about 70 pounds then. You wouldn't know it now. It looks like we're not going to make it. But the German army started moving out of the camp. Looks like the war came to an end. And we started moving out too, looking for food. After walking for 2.5 miles, we could see tanks and trucks coming towards us with an infantry unit. And the closer they got to us, the better they looked. So May 5, 1945, that's long ago, we were liberated by the American Third Army. To me, those guys were the heroes. They put us in trucks and jeeps, took us...
Students, please report to the attendance office to pick up items. Jordan Ohar, Ryan Link.
That sounds like the Gestapo.
Ryan Link, please come to the attendance office.
I mean, you used to get calls like that, you know. I said, I'm sorry, I just... So, we're taken to hospitals. I had typhus fever. It didn't look like I was going to make it, but I still was strong enough to withhold it. So now, I left the hospital. I started looking for my family. I had no money. I didn't know where to go. I hitchhiked my way to Czechoslovakia. It took about 3 weeks from Austria to come to Czechoslovakia. I hitchhiked my way on a truck with Russian soldiers.
Carly Taylor, please report to the attendance office for
Yeah.
a message. Carly Taylor, please come to attendance.
Okay, I forgot where I was now. I'm sorry? Yeah, I hitchhiked and I got home. I finally got to my hometown. I'll never forget. Things haven't changed in my village. The roads that used to be paved roads are dirt roads. There is cattle still going to pasture. Like things are backwards. What happened? I want to see these guys after.
Fiorito, Ryan
I know they got rules.
Victor Fantrazo, Andrew Gleaton, report to the main office.
You know that guy's name?
Brian Byers to the main office.
I'm sorry, I just, it kind of it loses a little bit of the story.
Clarity to the counseling center.
Okay, so anyway, I came home. Our home was still occupied by German civilians. So I went to the authorities. I said, I want my home back. And they said they can get the people out in 5 minutes. I says, no, give them 24 hours. I don't want to be like the Germans were. Give them 24 hours. So I moved into the house. Just bad memories.
Nowak, please come to the attendance office. Victoria Nowak, please come to attendance.
Okay. Anyway, I'm sorry. So, make a long story short, I came. I stayed in the house. It was bad memories, remembering my parents, and all of a sudden a miracle happened. My dad survived, and he came home too. And he didn't even know who I was. He was really in bad shape mentally. It took a long time to know that who I am. It didn't look like we were going to stay in our village because there's too many bad memories, and it looks like Russia is going to be occupying this territory. So my dad stayed. He didn't want to leave, and I left. I didn't want to leave, but my dad said he's too old to go anywhere. So I went to the mainland Czechoslovakia. I wound up in England. The British government helped us out as refugees. I had a chance to catch up with my schooling. And while I was in England, I found out I had relatives in Buffalo, but I didn't know their address. So we wrote a letter to the mayor of Buffalo, and he found my uncles here. So they are the guys that brought me out here. In those days, you had to have somebody vouch for you. You had to have an affidavit. So I came out here in 1948, November. I arrived here with $5 in my pocket and a will to live. I came to my uncle's house. Nobody would talk to you. All they do is give you food all the time. And I didn't like it there. I left. I hitchhiked my way to New York. I couldn't get a job in New York. I had no experience because they asked me what kind of experience I have. I said, well, I was in a concentration camp. Well, that doesn't help to get you a job. After getting a lot of jobs and making a tough way to live, the Korean War started. And guess what happened? I was drafted in the Army. And instead of sending me to Korea, they sent me to Germany. I took my basic training in Fort Dix, New Jersey, and our group went to Germany. So I couldn't wait. I was excited. I wanted to get back to Germany. I want to find the killers. I want to see their faces. But once I got to Germany, I see people are walking the streets, kids are playing. How do you get even? Do you you go on a rooftop and start machine gunning people? I'm not a killer. The only way I can get even is educate, speak to students like yourself, because you're the future. And we want to make sure that these things don't reoccur. I want to thank everybody for their patience. I'm just watching you guys. Everybody was listening, and I think you'll always remember that, and it'll help you, because you're the future. And I think the future is in good hands, watching you guys and your attitude. So thank you again. Yeah.